All right, let's jump right in. For the last few years, the whole story around AI has really been about a handful of big tech companies in Silicon Valley. But the real story, the one that's actually going to define the next decade, well, it isn't happening on an app. It's happening on the global stage, where entire nations are now entering the game, and the prize is technological sovereignty itself.
And this quote right here, it just nails it. This is the heart of the matter. While so many of us retail investors are glued to the Magnificent Seven, sovereign wealth funds, and entire governments, they're making a totally different and, frankly, a much, much bigger bet. See, they're not just buying stock in a company, they're buying the entire ecosystem, the power, the hardware, the pipes, all to control their own digital future.
So what's fascinating is the contrast here. You've got the tip of the iceberg, right? That's the AI we all see and touch, ChatGPT, NVIDIA's amazing chips, the Mag 7 stocks. But underneath the water, that's the hidden foundation. And we are talking about a physical build-out on a scale that is just hard to comprehend. We mean dedicated power grids pulling gigawatts of energy, specialized liquid-to-chip cooling that you need for this stuff, and most importantly, absolute control over their own data. This isn't just a software thing. It's an industrial revolution. Okay, so to really get what's going on, we have to kind of zoom out. This is about so much more than just cool new tech. It's about the geopolitical map being completely redrawn, where digital infrastructure, that's the new territory everyone's fighting for. For the longest time, it really felt like there were only two options. You were either with the American tech stack or you were with the Chinese one. But now, a whole new group of really ambitious and really well-funded nations are stepping up and saying, you know what? Neither. They're using their capital to build a third option because they refuse to be dependent on either superpower for their future. And that brings us to the absolute core concept of this whole thing, sovereign AI. But let's be super clear here, this isn't just about a country having its own version of ChatGPT. No. This is about viewing the control of AI as absolutely essential to national defense, to economic stability, to their cultural future in the 21st century. It's basically a declaration of technological independence.
So, how are they actually pulling this off? Well, what's happening is these nations are acting like the biggest, most aggressive corporations on the planet. They're deploying massive, massive amounts of capital with a single laser-focused strategic goal.
Take a look at this number, $100 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not a company's valuation. This is the seed money for a single national project.
That number? That's the starting fund for what Saudi Arabia is calling Project Transcendence. And their goal is crystal clear. They don't just want to participate in the AI revolution, they want to be a central hub for it. They're developing everything from their own Arabic language models to the giant data centers needed to power them. What you're seeing is a strategic pivot from an economy built on oil to one built on data and compute. They see it as absolutely vital for their long-term survival and influence.
And listen, this isn't just happening in one country. It's a global trend. You've got India positioning itself as a leader for the global south. You've got the UAE and Singapore moving at an incredible speed, building out the physical data centers and doing whatever it takes to attract the best AI minds in the world. This is a full-on coordinated global race for digital independence.
So, how does all this stuff actually get built? Well, behind all the huge financial announcements is a strategy that's all about the physical world. The sources we've looked at are clear. This is a business of atoms, not just bits. You can't just code your way to sovereign AI. You literally have to build it from the ground up. Which, of course, brings us to that classic investment playbook for any gold rush, the picks and shovels strategy. I mean, why try to guess which prospector is going to strike it rich? Instead, the smart money is pouring into the foundational stuff, the tools, the infrastructure that every single person in the gold rush needs. It's a bet on the whole ecosystem, not just one winner. So what does this physical stack actually look like? First up, power. And the energy demand here is so insane that we're seeing companies like Microsoft seriously looking into building their own nuclear power plants. Then you've got compute. This means really specialized data centers with next-gen cooling systems just to stop the chips from melting. And finally, connectivity. We're talking about blazing fast fiber optics and custom-designed chips just to move the literal oceans of data these models need to function. And this is where the investment idea starts to feel real and tangible. Instead of just piling more money into the Mag 7, the strategy is to invest in the companies that enable them. You can get exposure to that energy backbone through ETFs like POUR. For the cooling systems, you have companies like Vertiv. For the networking, Arista is a huge player. Or, you can get broader exposure through tech ETFs.
This is how you invest in the atoms of AI, not just the bits.
Okay, but with this kind of massive opportunity comes massive and often really hidden risk. And to understand this trade, you have to look at the brutal truths that come along for the ride when you invest at this intersection of tech and, well, geopolitics.
It's the question every single smart investor should be asking themselves right now. With all this money pouring into the space, what could possibly go wrong? Turns out, quite a lot. Look at this chart. This is what's called the ROIC gap. That's return on invested capital. And it is so critical to understand this. Right now, more than $400 billion is being spent every year on AI infrastructure, but it's only generating about $100 billion in new revenue. That is a staggering disconnect. This chasm between the hype and the reality, it's the single biggest piece of evidence supporting the whole AI bubble theory. Think about it. For every $4 being invested, only $1 of new revenue is being created. So what are these brutal truths? First, there's a new kind of risk called geopolitical beta. What this means is your data center stock could tank, not because of its earnings, but because of some sudden policy change or regional instability where it operates. Suddenly, your portfolio is exposed to the politics of the Middle East. Second, currency risk. This one's simple, but it can be absolutely deadly. Making a 20% gain on a stock in Saudi Arabia means nothing if the Saudi currency falls 20% against the dollar when you decide to cash out. And finally, the bubble allegation. We just saw that ROIC gap. Top analysts are saying there's a real 25–30% chance that AI just plain fails to deliver the massive economic boom that's currently priced into these stocks. So, with this landscape of incredible opportunity, but also some very real risks, how should you even approach it? Well, it's going to take a new framework, a new way of thinking that goes way beyond just analyzing a stock. You have to start thinking like a sovereign investor yourself. Yeah, the old model of just looking at a company's balance sheet, that's not enough anymore. The whole context is shifted. Everything now exists in the shadow of these huge national moves. So you have to start your analysis with what the sources are calling sovereign fundamentals. That means understanding the strategy, the policy, and the stability of the nation itself first. So here's a practical 3-point framework you can actually use. First, analyze the sovereign strategy. Where are these big national funds putting their cash? What new laws are they passing? Second, track the physical bottlenecks. The real alpha isn't in a press release. It's in a construction permit for a new power plant or who's getting the water rights for cooling. And third, you have to price in the real risks. You have to actively acknowledge and account for that geopolitical beta and that huge ROIC gap when you make your decisions. And all this leaves us with one final and I think critical question. We are watching a historic power shift where sovereign nations are behaving like the world's biggest tech companies. In this new era where the line between state power and corporate power is getting blurrier by the day, who's actually going to win? The coders building the tech, the capitalists funding it, or the kings and national leaders steering these $100 billion projects? That is the real sovereign AI trade.